you are standing at the edge of a trackless forest. The sun has dipped below the horizon, and the stars are beginning to pierce the twilight. You look around. There are no signs, no roads, no trails. If you reached into your pocket, there is no phone, no glowing screen, no satellite tracking your position from space. For a modern human, this situation triggers instant panic. It is the terrifying, paralyzing realization that you are completely lost. But for 99% of human history, this wasn't an emergency. This was simply Tuesday. For roughly 300,000 years, our ancestors walked across vast, unmapped continents. They crossed scorching deserts, dense jungles, and frozen tundras. They did it without a single piece of paper, without a compass, and without a map. Yet, they didn't get lost. They knew exactly where they were, where the water was, and how to get back to their children. Today, the average human cannot navigate their own town if their GP's signal drops. We have outsourced our orientation to an algorithm that does not care about us, engineered by corporations to keep us dependent. But our ancestors relied on an internal engine of staggering complexity. So how did they do it? How did ancient humans navigate the entire planet using nothing but their minds? Let's start with the biology. In 2014, scientists were awarded the Nobel Prize for discovering something hardwired into the mammalian brain, an internal GPS. Deep inside the hippocampus are grid cells and place cells. Together, they function like a biological mapping system. They fire continuously, tracking your direction, your speed, and your position relative to the environment. When neuroscientists study modern indigenous navigators, like the Inuit tracking across featureless Arctic ice or the Aboriginal Australians navigating the outback, they find something remarkable. Their hippocampi are highly active and structurally robust. But when they look at modern urban humans who rely exclusively on turn-by-turn GPS navigation, that area of the brain begins to atrophy. By letting a satellite think for us, we are literally shrinking the machinery in our skulls that keeps us oriented. We are evolving ourselves to become helpless. Ancient humans didn't need paper maps because the Earth itself was their map. Every landscape was a living blueprint. They practiced a level of hyper-awareness that modern minds can scarcely comprehend. To an ancient hunter-gatherer, a broken twig wasn't just debris. It was a directional marker left by a passing animal or a tribal member. The way moss grew on a specific type of bark indicated north. The angle of the sand dunes told them the prevailing direction of the seasonal winds. The flight paths of birds in the late afternoon pointed directly toward hidden water sources. They read the terrain the way you read a text message, instantly, fluidly, and with total comprehension. Consider the absolute pinnacle of this ancient capacity, the Polynesian wayfinders. Thousands of years ago, long before the invention of the sextant, these sailors colonized the vast Pacific Ocean. They traveled thousands of miles between tiny islands in open wooden canoes. They did not have charts. Instead, they sat in the hull of the boat and felt the ocean. They memorized the exact rhythm of the swells. If the canoe hit a wave at a specific angle, they knew it was a rebound swell, bouncing off an island hundreds of miles over the horizon. They read the color of the clouds. A faint green tint on the underside of a cloud meant it was reflecting a shallow lagoon hidden far below the curvature of the earth. And then, there was the sky. Long before the invention of the compass, the night sky was the ultimate navigation panel. Ancient humans understood the architecture of the cosmos. They knew that the stars weren't static points of light. They were a moving clock. By tracking the rising and setting of specific constellations, they could maintain a straight line across thousands of miles of open ocean or flat desert. Navigators would memorize hundreds of stars, their specific paths across the sky, and exactly what time of year they would appear. The sky was an immense rotating textbook, and every child learned to read its pages. But how did they pass this massive amount of spatial data down through generations without writing? They didn't write maps, they sang them. Among the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, navigation was achieved through what anthropologists call songlines. These were complex navigational tracks mapped across the entire continent, woven into traditional songs, stories, and dances. A songline described the landscape in precise detail. An isolated rock formation, a specific river bend, a grove of ancient trees. By memorizing the song, A person could walk hundreds of miles through completely unfamiliar territory, singing the map as they went. If they kept the rhythm and remembered the lyrics, they would arrive precisely at their destination. This was the original crowdsourced data. Not an app, a melody, not an internet connection, a human voice echoing around a campfire. To understand how profound this connection was, look at the contrast between how we see space now versus how they saw it then. Today, space is a void we cross to get from point A to point B. It is an inconvenience. We want the fastest route, the shortest duration, the least friction. For our ancestors, the journey was the intelligence. They knew the history of every rock formation. They assigned spirits and memories to every mountain pass. The land was not a resource to be mapped and conquered. It was an extension of their own collective memory. When you live in a world where your survival depends on knowing exactly where the clean water flows during a drought, you don't look at a landscape as scenery. You look at it as a matter of life and death. Then, about 10,000 years ago, the trap snapped shut. Humans invented agriculture, built walls, and drew borders. We stopped moving. We created permanent settlements, and with them, we invented the physical map. We flattened the three-dimensional, sensory experience of the living earth into lines drawn on parchment. We told ourselves we were conquering nature, but in reality, we were walling ourselves off from it. We stopped looking at the stars because we had street lamps. We stopped reading the wind because we had walls. Over centuries, navigation became specialized, then mechanized, and finally digitized. We traded our biological awareness for predictable comfort. Today, we drive through life staring at a tiny blue dot on a screen, completely blind to the world passing outside our windows. We are safer from the elements, yes. We are rarely physically lost. But in making everything easy, we created a deeper kind of disorientation. We spend our lives moving along pre-programmed corridors, entirely detached from the environments that sustained us for hundreds of thousands of years. The modern economy thrives on making you completely reliant on the tools it sells you. The more you forget how to see the world, the more you have to pay for a machine to look at it for you. Weakness sells, and dependence keeps the gears turning. Your ancestors woke up every morning already connected to the pulse of the planet. They didn't need a screen to tell them where they stood, because they knew they belonged to the landscape beneath their feet. They were never lost, because the world was their home. We built a system that tracks our every move, yet we have never felt more disconnected. Perhaps it's time to put the phone away, look up at the stars, and remember the ancient path back home. If you want to keep exploring the hidden systems of history that shaped the modern world, hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on how digital life is changing us. Thank you for watching.